Shalom Lekulam, and welcome to our weekly study in the Torah portion. This week's Torah portion is Parsha Tazria, and in this Parsha we're going to study basically how this Parsha is related to our internal work that we are doing during the Sefirat HaOmer as well. And also we're going to see how this Parsha is also related not only to our internal work and how these different laws when it comes to the Tazria, and also the in the beginning of the parsha about the giving birth of a male child, how this is related also to the other parsha, because the other parsha's name was Sweetening, the previous parsha, and this one we start talking about the eighth day again. So we're gonna see how this Tazraat, which is leprosy, is related to the leprosy when it comes to our spiritual state, and how we can get rid of that. Also, we're going to talk about the conflict between the right and the left, and how sometimes this conflict is unholy conflict that gives power to the Tumah, the side of unholiness, and how sometimes this conflict between the two sides are actually a conflict that is actually known as Lishma, for the sake of heaven. So we're going to talk about that a little more. Hope that you join us after the introduction so we can start our study of Parsha Tazria. Welcome back. As we mentioned in the beginning, we're going to be studying Parsha Tazria. Parsha Tazria is found in Vaikra, that is the book of Leviticus, chapter 12, verse 1 to chapter 13, verse 59. And as always, we're going to do a little Parsha in a little nutshell, what it is all about, so we can put our study into context, so we know when we're studying the Parsha, where are we when we are talking about these Kabbalistic insights on the Parsha. Okay, so the Parsha is a continuation of Shemini, basically, and in this case it continues with discussions based on what is called Tumah v'Tahara, which is ritual impurity and purity. And it starts specifically saying, when a woman conceives and gives birth to a male, she shall be impure for 7 days, as the days of her separation shall she be impure. This is basically talking about the menstrual cycle of a woman, so she should be separated just the same when she has a male child. And when she has this child, a male child, she has to go through this process of purification. And we're going to see how the word basically, or the two words, ki tazria, which is basically, that she shall be unclean. We're going to see that the woman that is in childbirth, basically, she basically, or these words basically that describe this thing, it's actually something else, and we're gonna see what something else is all about. Ki tazria, ki can be actually translated into because of tazria. We're gonna see how that plays important meaning in our study. So when this happens, when the woman gives birth to a male child, she has to basically go to the mikveh, and we talk about the mikveh in the previous parsha as well, that this is basically implying that we need to go to the mikveh, whether it is, because of the menstrual cycle in a woman, or because of the spilling of seed in a man, and also, other ways that a person can get ritually impure. And also in this parsha, what we're gonna see is that it mentions that on the 8th day, once again, the 8th day is mentioned here, just like Shemini. Here, once again, the 8th day is mentioned, and this time is the 8th day of the life of the child. And we're talking here about circumcision, and we're going to be talking about the mystery behind the reason for this circumcision, at least in this parsha. There's a lot of other deeper explanations about the concept of circumcision, what it is all about, the breed or land, all that kind of stuff. But we're not gonna go into details into that, because that's gonna take us basically a whole hour, basically just to explain circumcision as a concept, right? But then we see that the parsha jumps from that, basically from a woman giving birth to a child, in this case a male child, to Sarat. And Sarat is translated sometimes the wrong way as leprosy. And why do we say that is translated or mistranslated as leprosy? It's because this is a different type of illness or plague. It is something that can not only afflict the skin of the person, it can afflict the garments. And we're going to see what the garments is actually all about when we read about from the Arizal, the gates of reincarnation, what the garments are all about. And then he mentions, about the different colors, white or pinkish patches, that appears in the person's skins. And then it talks about garments, and also talks about red and green. And there's different colors, that have different meanings. And then a Kohen is supposed to be the one that will judge whether it is pure or impure. And we're going to talk about who is that Kohen, what does the Kohen represent in here. And there's also a quarantine that is going to happen, and it's a 7-day quarantine. And then the Kohen after that pronounces the person is tamei, which means impure, or tahur, which is pure. And a person that is afflicted with this plague, it's a spiritual plague actually, it's very different than just leprosy. This person must be basically, or should live alone outside of the camp or any city, that they're living until this person is healed, right? And then the area or the afflicted area in the garment or in the clothing, in this case, is removed, and then if the tasraat start over again, the entire garment must be burned. So we're talking here about very different illness, and it has to do with some Kabbalists call it, a supernatural plague. It has to do with spirituality, basically impure spirituality. And as we know as Kabbalists, a plague usually happens because of wrong speech, because we're using speech in the wrong way. There are two covenants. There is a covenant of the tongue and the covenant of the breed, which is represented by the sexual organs. And the covenant of the breed, everybody knows, is the circumcision. So this is what is talking here in the beginning. We're talking about the circumcision of a child, which is the covenant that basically males have a problem with. They need to control that urge, right? Now there's another covenant, it's the covenant of the tongue, a covenant of speech basically. And this covenant actually means, that you need to be circumcised not only in what is called the breed, in the sexual organ, spiritually also speaking as well, the Brit Milah. But also remember, Brit Milah also means, Milah means also words. So it's also, a covenant of the word, so the tongue. So evil speech creates plagues. So this plague is created by that evil speech. So it's gotta be also a circumcision of the tongue. Okay? And that's what this parsha is all about. That's why you have the circumcision of a child, and then you have the mention of tasraat, basically leprosy, or what we can call it actually spiritual leprosy, which is created by evil speech. Okay, so this is how it is related. That's why you might think he's talking about here woman is impure when they have a male child, then the male child needs to be circumcised. So that's a Brit Milah. And then Brit Milah, Milah words, right? Then it jumps to Tzarat. Why? Because Tzarat is talking about the Milah, the Brit Milah of the tongue. Okay? About the evil tongue. And in this case, we're going to see it this way. Male have to control what is called the Brit Milah. That is between the two legs, to put it that way. The women have to work in the Brit Milah, that of the tongue, that is between the two hands. Okay, so there's two hands. So you have 10 hands, symbolizing, the 10 sephirot of the tree of life. You have also 10 toes, symbolizing also 10 sephirot of the tree of life. And in the middle, you're gonna find this covenants. And if you study the Sefer Yetzirah, in the beginning, I think, if I remember correct, that will be chapter 1, verse 1 and 2, where it mentions, about this covenant, the covenant of the Brit Milah, the covenant of the circumcision of the tongue. So you got food there, spiritual food to do some research on that. Okay, so let's start our lesson. We're going to start reading how the Parsha start. And it says, and spoke Yod-He and the Vav-He to Moshe, saying, speak to the Israelite people thus, when a woman at childbirth bears a male, she shall be unclean 7 days. She shall be unclean as at the time of her menstrual infirmity. On the 8th day, the flesh of his foreskin shall be circumcised. We mentioned before in Parsha Shemini that Shemini basically, in this way you're going to see the word Ha-Shemini, Beyom Ha-Shemini, right? In the previous Parsha we have also Beyom Ha-Shemini on the 8th day. So we have the Kohens, basically inaugurated on the 8th day. We have here also a child is having a circumcision on the 8th day. And it's because these midot from Chesed, Geburah, Tiferet, Netzachot, Yesod, and Mahut need to be basically corrected. In this case, the child is receiving basically all these lights from these Sephirot. And until the child doesn't receive all this light from this Sephirot, they cannot be called fully, or we can say, alive and strong in order to receive the covenant of the Brit Milah, which is Bina, the 8th day. Okay? And on the 8th day, that means that this is not only that has to do with the life of the child, this is something that has to do with spirituality. 8th means transcendence. It's something that is beyond what we know here as physical reality. What we're talking here is about spiritual reality. And that's why Hamishi is very important, okay? And we're gonna see how this actually plays. So let's read a little bit. As always, we are studying using the teachings of Ramchal and also Rabbi Yaakov Abu Haseira, the Avir Yaakov. In this case, we're gonna go to Ramchal. And Ramchal tells us that Parsha Shemini concluded with the laws that we're talking about, pure and impure foods. And the children of Israel should not eat those foods, right? Then in this Parsha Tazria, what we're going to see is that now they're going to be talking, or the Torah is going to be talking about another type of tumah or unholiness that we must be aware of and stay away from. And delineates these laws concerning impurities created by childbirth and also associated with the Metzora. And like we read before, it says, when a woman conceives and gives birth to a male, she shall be impure for 7 days, as the days of her menstrual infirmity. And she shall be impure, basically. That's Vayikra 12:2. when a woman conceives and gives birth to a male, they say that this should not be said. Basically, that when a woman gives birth to a male, in addition, the word Tazria basically in there, which is key, it says Ishaki Tazria ve Yalet Sahor, or Yalda Sahor, Sahar actually, Ki Tzaria ve Yalda Sahor. Basically, what it says here, that it is allude to spiritual lights in which are passed down to the child. The male child then is endowed with these spiritual lights, and these lights are basically 7 permutations of the name of the Creator. And these 7 permutations have a sum total of 687 lights. And they're the equivalent or the numerical value of the word Tazria, which is the name of the Parsha. And that's why the name was given, even though when you look at it, it says Veidaber Adonai el Moshe le'amer Davar el Bnei Israel le'amer Isha ki Tazria ve'yalda Sahor. So you're gonna see that it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and after the 12 you see the word Tazria. So it's the 13th word in this parsha, and yet that's the word chosen for the name of the parsha, and it's for a reason, because that word Tazria has a numerical value of 687. 687 is the numerical value of the permutations of the name of the Creator. In this case, the permutation is the name Yohe and the Vavhe, in which we're gonna see the Ab, Sag, Ma, and Bon, which are the 4 Parsufim, and the names are basically the numbers 72, 63, 45, and 52. And the sum total of this Parsufim is 232. Yet there's another name that is also permutated, or as I like to call it, it is basically extended. The words are extended. Instead of having an aleph, just an aleph, you spell the word aleph, and this is what is happening here. So the name Ehye also is expanded in that way, or permutated, to the point that it gives 161, the results 151, 143. The addition of those 3 permutations, 455. So 232 and 455 equals 687. So these are the lights that the male child is basically acquiring during those 7 days. And that's why, it should be done on the 8th day and not any day before that. A woman is only able to give birth to a male child if these lights are combined together. Okay? And when it's translated in here, let me go back. When it says, when a woman, Isha ki Tazria, when a woman, a childbearer, bears a male, ve Yalda Sahor. So the word key, which is, let me go back here. This word here, these 2 letters here, the Haf and the Yod. The word key can be also translated, instead of when, can be also translated because. So it can be translated Ki Tazria, must be read also, as because of Tazria, because of the combination of these 7 names, totaling 687 lights. She was able to give birth to a male son. Okay, and then after that, she needs to take care of herself, basically, by not basically being with her husband or anything like that, just a regular thing that is done during the blood menstruation, and things like that. This thing actually contributes to the strengthening of the fetus, and in this case, in the child when he's born, and that's the reason they wait 8 days to make sure that these lights are inside that vessel, before then the Brit Milah can be performed. Then on the 8th day, you shall circumcise the flesh of his foreskin. The foreskin is given to the forces of Tuma, to the forces of impurity. Basically, it's thrown to the earth, in keeping with the word of the verse that says, Venahash ofer lehamo, the snake, symbolizing the forces of Tuma. The dirt is his bread, lehamo. This is from Yeshaya 65:25, and Ramchal tells us the circumcision cannot be performed prior to the 8th day, for only on this day the child is sufficiently developed spiritually to be able to remove these foreskin and keep the forces of Tumah at a distance from the child. So it's very important to wait until the 8th day, because the 8th day, like I mentioned before, represents transcendence, the transcendence. So now let's go to Rabbi Yaakov Abu Haseira, and Rabbi Abu Haseira we're going to start on verse 3, chapter 12, verse 3, which is, on the 8th day the flesh of the foreskin shall be circumcised. So what we need to understand from this verse is the following. Through the Brit Milah, which is the circumcision, the divine kindness is revealed, and basically mercy sweetens the judgment. The word actually yamol, which is this one here, from the verse, on the 8th day the flesh of his foreskin you shall be circumcised. So we're going to be studying these three words, yamol, basar, and then orlato. Okay, so yamol equals 86. The numerical value is 86, which is the same as the name Elohim. Okay, then when you spell in full the name Elohim, you expand it, right? It has a numerical value of 300, so you're gonna find it right here. And then when you do it in increments, you start writing Aleph, then Aleph Lamed, then Aleph Lamed Hey, then Aleph Lamed Hey, then Aleph Lamed Hey Yod Mem, until you get the full name of Elohim. That equals to 200. So when you have 200 plus 300, that gives you 500. And then if we add two more digits for each of these permutations, right, which is 2, it gives you 402, which is the same value as the word basar, which is this one here. So this word is Elohim, and then it's related to basar in here. Okay, and keep that word in mind, because then that word is going to give you something else. Then the word orla, from this word here, orlato, right? The word orla, which is foreskin, has a numerical value of 305. Okay, so let me write here in Hebrew the word orla, so you can have it, so you know how it is spelled. So it's basically an Ein, a Resh, a Lamed, and a Hey. That's the word orla. So this word basically equals 305 and is related to this word here, orlato, which is the word that is in the Torah. Okay, and that word actually is also related to the name Elohim when it's spelled in full, and when you add 5 for each letter of the name. So you have the name Aleph Lamed Hey Yod Mem, then you add 5 for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that is basically the same numerical value as orla. Orla means foreskin. So what it's telling us here is that all these things in here, are basically related to judgment. So it's related to judgment. This is just about judgment. We're doing this about judgment. This is from the side of judgment, right? However, the initial letters of the word basar or lato, which is, this one here, basar or lato, you have the bait and the ayin. You put the ayin first and then the bait. That will give you 72. And that is related with the first parsufim or second parsufim. If you add a galgalta to it, it will be 5 parsufim. It will be the second parsufim, which is related to Chokmah, which is, with the name is Ab. Ab is basically a numerical value of 72 and is related to mercy. So what we have here is that the name of Hashem spelled in full, giving us the number 72, which is the name associated with mercy and kindness. And this can be found also on the Tikkunim 155a. This means that through the Brit Milah, the harsh judgments are sweetened by the divine mercy of the Creator. And that's the reason we need to wait for the 8th day, because the 8th day, when we go back here, Binah is the 8th day. However, Chokmah is before Binah. So how can Chokmah bring light to this lower 7 down here? It's through Binah. So we wait 7 days, we circumcise the child on the 8th day, and that's how the light of Chokmah can then live inside the vessel of that child after the birth. Okay, so it's all a process, it's all a system that is created that way. Okay, and there are other deeper meanings when it comes to the circumcision that we can talk about it, but it's gonna take us a long time just to explain circumcision from the Kabbalistic point of view itself. So let's go to chapter 13, verse 2 and 3. And it says, if a person will have on the skin of his flesh a site is a discolored patch, all right, a small discolored patch, site, or sapahat or bacheret, and it shall be on the skin of his flesh an affliction of sarat, which we know sarat is not leprosy, is a spiritual leprosy, kind of. He shall be brought to Aharon the Kohen, or to one of his sons the Kohanim. The Kohen shall look at the affliction of the skin of the flesh. If hair is in the affliction, or if the hair in the affliction has turned white, and the appearance of the affliction is deeper than the skin of the flesh, then it is an affliction of Tzaraat. The Kohen shall look at it and declare him to be contaminated. So now we're going to go into how this Tzaraat has to do with us. So the first thing that we were talking about was the circumcision. That's the covenant of the circumcision of the sexual organ that has to do with Yesod here. Alright? With Yesod. Yesod is basically the Sephirat above Malchut. It's the Sephirat that channels all the energy to the kingdom, to Malchut. Now we're going to talk about a different covenant. And that covenant is, that covenant has to do with a pseudo Sephirah that is right here. Let me see if I can format that so you can see, what. Let's put it like that, with this color here. Okay. To a pseudo Sephirah, because it's not a system, but that Sephirah is right there in the middle between Chokmah and Binah, and it's like basically the connection between these two, and that has to do with the speech, right? With this other covenant, which is of the covenant of the tongue, right? And what we're gonna see is now from Yesod to Da'at. Okay. Also, we're gonna see that there's another type of circumcision. It's called the circumcision of the heart, that has to do with Tifaret, right? So you have Yesod, Tifaret, and Da'at. The circumcision of the sexual organs, circumcision of the heart, and circumcision of the tongue. Okay, so but we're going to talk about circumcision of the heart in a different different lesson. But in this case, it's talking about haughtiness, which is the most despicable of all the character traits. Our sages said in Talmud Sota, page 5a, that when a person is haughty, this person drives away the Shekhinah from the world. And we're gonna see how serious this thing is. A haughty person, and this is, a haughty person closes his eyes and his heart and refuses to think about who really is and what he has to be, or basically why he must not be so arrogant, right? So basically he's talking, about a person that is haughty and arrogant. And then this person actually thinks that everything that he or she has accomplished, they have accomplished because of their own, that they are the reason why they're having a good life, or they're having a let's say, success in life and all that. And in reality, is because of the Creator. Then when you read Yeshayahu, Isaiah 66:23 says, all flesh will come to prostrate themselves before me, says Hashem. So if a person see himself or herself as just as flesh, basically this person doesn't give credit to a creator or creation for his existence or her existence, this person will merit basically to prostrate himself and appear before Hashem, but in a form of basically of pain and humiliation, right? And a person will be excluded only if the person view himself or herself less or more humble, let's say, than those are haughty. And this person basically view himself or herself as an important person deserving no stature and honor. However, this person may have stature and honor and be humble. This person actually will merit to prostrate himself or herself in front of the Creator, but without pain and humiliation, which is the contrary of a person that is haughty. Mishnat Hasidim, specifically in Masechet HaTeshuvah 2:1, he says that the forces of impurity only take hold of the last two letters of the name Yod He Vav He. Okay, but the person that is haughty and arrogant, an arrogant person, causes and forces the forces of Tumah to take also control of the other two letters, the Yod and the Vav, which are the two letters of the name Yod He and the Vav He. And that's why the word Ga'ava, which is haughtiness, has the numerical value of 15, which is the same as the letters Yod and He. This indicates that the person that is arrogant and haughty, this person causes a blemish on the first two letters of the four-letter name, and they're strengthening other gods. Okay, so now we're going to see this in a more detail. So once again, we are in chapter 13, verse 2 and 3. If a person's will have on the skin of the flesh a discolored patch, sight, right? And the word sight, which is a shin aleph tet, refers to this haughtiness, this arrogance. It is related to the word hit nasot, which means the Lord over others. As these persons see what the Torah in its pure and refined ways of expression says about a person. The verse says, if a person will have on the skin of his flesh. The Torah could have said, if a person will have on his skin, but it says in here, on the skin of his flesh. The extra word for flesh tells us that is the disgracefulness of a person that is arrogant, and how little value this person basically has for the community. He has put himself on a pedestal, acting as if they were the greatest person in the world and that they're better than anybody else. And they don't stop to look and see where all these blessings that they have truly come from and who this person truly is. So they see themselves just as flesh and blood. And it's kind of harsh, what is written here, but it's like they said, basically this person is equal, when they see themselves as flesh and blood, is equals to maggots and worms, dust and ashes, that have no substance. They just animals that feed from things that are not pure, right? And therefore the Torah emphasizing the word basaro, his flesh. In other words, that this arrogant person is only flesh and no substance. It's only a vessel with no soul. Okay, so this is what the person should see in what the Torah is saying when it comes to this. If a person will have on the skin of his flesh, right? So it's basically Adam ki yeye ba'or basaro sight. So that's the verse, basically what it says. And then it says, o sapahat o bacheret. And basically sapahat and bacheret, basically sapahat, which means worst, and bacheret, which is more worse or even worse. It's like from bad to worse, basically. This is a person that is arrogant, but not only arrogant, more than that, or the different arrogance. So basically, sight implies a person that he thinks that this person is better than others or is the lord over others. And then sapahat, that is worse than just thinking that you're lord over other people. Well, then bacheret, which is even worse, which is the kind of person that even make or causes terrible damage to the world and gives tremendous power to an angel called Samael, which is the evil angel. And everybody knows, that there's people in the world that are like that. Usually, not only we see them as a good example would be, Hitler, right? One of them. But also there's other examples. Not necessarily has to be a leader from a nation. We see examples also in organizations and social organizations as well that may claim, to be defending certain human rights and everything, but they forget about the human rights of others and they create blemishes in the name of the four-letter name Yod-Heh and the Vav-Heh, right? And then he mentions, and he shall be on the skin of his flesh an affliction of tzara'at. And in here, when he says and he shall be, is the word basically is the word Behaya. And so this word basically contains the same letter names as the name Yod-Heh and Vav-Heh, right? And basically what it says here that the forces of impurity could not take hold of the last two, or they could actually take only hold of these two letters of the name, basically the Vav and the He. So these are the two last letters of the Yod-Heh. But now what we're gonna see is that it takes hold of those two letters as well when the person does that. And this refers basically as an affliction in the soul of the person, which refers that the angel Samael has taken over. And this person shall be brought to Aaron the Cohen. Basically, this person is going to be immediately judged in heaven by Michael, the Cohen Hagadol above. Okay. or to one of his sons. It refers to one of the angels that is under the command of the angel Michael or Michael. Then he says, that the coin shall look at the affliction. The affliction refers to the arrogance and haughtiness that is rooted in this person, Vera hakoin et ha naga. On the skin of the flesh, beor ha basar. The affliction then can be recognized as follow, Then he talks, if there's sear, which is hair, and in the banaga, and in the afflictions has turned white, and this is where we see the word Laban. And our sages said that the Yetzer Hara at first, the Yetzer Hara is a evil inclination at first, resembles a strand of se'ar, which is hair. It's from Sukkah, Talmud Sukkah 52a. And then the arrogant person, when this person, is so arrogant like that, it blemishes the name Elohim, which is holy, and strengthens other gods, which are forces of impurity that take over. The word Halaban, which is white, or Lebana, which is whiteness, had the numerical value of 87, which we have it here. Halaban, okay. Halaban and Lebana equals 87, and that's the same numerical value as the name Elohim when you add 1 to itself. Remember, we saw Elohim equals 86, as we saw here, right? And here is the word Elohim, but this time you add 1 for the word itself, the word Halaban, or even if it is Lebana, it's 87. And the word, the hair, basically, sear, basically means the Yetzer Hara that resembles a strand of hair, along with affliction, refers to the evil angel Samael that has strengthened other gods. This happened because the name Elohim, represented by the word Laban, has been turned into Elohim, these other gods. Okay, so now we see that the name Elohim, instead of being a name of God, Elohim can also be translated into gods. Okay, so now it's Elohim. These are gods, right? Instead of seeing the oneness, now we see fragmentation. And that's basically what it is. When you look at a person that is arrogant and think that has power over other people, it's a person that is disconnected from the one soul that we all share. They don't see themselves as part of the other people that they're basically using or abusing. They see themselves as something apart, not part, but apart. They are something different and special, and the other ones are less important, and those are people to be used and abused in order to satisfy their egoistic wants and desires. Then it says, and the appearance of the affliction is deeper than the skin of the flesh, and basically that this person does not stop to think and has no reason basically for living other than using other people. He has nothing but flesh, dust, and worms and maggots. That's what is written here, even though it sounds harsh, basically it resembles that thing as well. Thus, the appearance of an affliction means that this person is basically rotten with the spirit of the evil angel Samael. And then he says, Amok me'or basaro is deeper than the skin of the flesh. It means that this person is not even contemplating where he comes from, what he's made of, and doesn't realize, that he's also, part of the soul of others. This person simply thinks, I'm just flesh and blood, and I have to make the best of this life. And that means even, doing whatever it takes to get what I want in my life and enjoy as much as I can. And this person is considered, as harsh as it sounds, just as a maggot and a worm. The Kohen shall look at it and declare him contaminated. The Kohen, sees this person. This person is going to be declared immediately contaminated. And the Kohen Hagadol not only means, Haron, it also means, the angel Michael or Michael. And the appearance of the affliction is deeper than the skin of the flesh, so being, the same thing, meaning that the heaven above does know and reveals his shame. He shall be pronounced to be contaminated at that time. And the appearance of affliction means, the level of haughtiness or basically how big you think you are compared with others. The deeper in the skin of the flesh meaning is how deep inside is this haughtiness and how bad it is, or basically how low your soul has fallen, basically. And then it is an affliction of tzara'at. Even the person does not recognize that they have this type of spiritual leprosy. The Kohen shall look at it and declare to be contaminated, meaning, like I mentioned before, the Kohen Hagadol above shall declare him as he truly is, as a person that is contaminated and not basically meriting anything other than to be separated from the camp of Israel. It seems that the Abir Yaakov here repeats the same verses and explaining them, from a deeper level to a more simple level, so people can understand it. So that's why you see some kind of repetition of the same verse over and over, and it's in order for you to make sure that you understand, what he's trying to explain here. Let's go to chapter 13, verse 9 and 11. If an affliction of tzara'at will be upon a person, he shall be brought to the Kohen. The Kohen shall look and behold, if it is a white sight. Remember sight we mentioned, it's a blemish, the name sight. In reality, cannot be translated properly into English, so that's why I'm saying sight. And so if it is a white sight on the skin and it has changed the hair to white, or there is healthy living flesh within the sight, then it is old tzara'at in the skin and his flesh, and the Kohen in his flesh, and the Kohen shall declare him to be contaminated. Then the Kohen shall not quarantine him, for he is contaminated. So basically, this time what we're talking is not haughtiness, we're talking here about anger. And it says that anger actually is a trait that is related to haughtiness and arrogance. When a person clothes himself with arrogance and haughtiness and imagines to be greater than anybody else, this person becomes prone to anger. In the Zohar, volume 2, page 182a, it says that nothing can so thoroughly defile a person inside and out as much as anger, for the soul immediately leaves him and is replaced by a foreign god. Okay, so let's go to Zohar volume 2, page 182a, and if you're reading, or if you have this Zohar from the Kabbalah Center, the version of the Kabbalah Center, an abridged version, we're basically talking about Bereshit Aleph, and we're gonna be reading from the paragraph 265. Okay, this is under where it says idolatry, bloodshed, and sexually immoral behavior. 265 on volume 1 of the Kabbalah Center Zohar. And if you have a regular Zohar, that would be Bereshit, but it's basically volume 2, page 182a. So I like to read, from this one because it has the Baal Hasulam commentaries in it. And Hashem Elohim commanded. This is from Bereshit 2:16. This verse alludes to the prohibition of idol worship, which is included within the tree of knowledge of good and evil. As it is being said that the word to command, in Hebrew tzav, is but idolatry, from where, referring to the tree of knowledge of good and evil, other Elohim originate. There are three transgressions pertaining to the tree of knowledge, which are idol worshipping, sexually immoral behavior, and bloodshed. And this, namely, the klipa of idolatry, dwells in the liver, kaved, which means also heavy. Hence, let more work be laid, meaning more work be heavy. This is from Shemot 5:9, of idol worship. Because of idolatry, the liver becomes angry. By becoming angry, the liver is passed on as a dwelling for the klipa of idol worshipping. It has been said that whoever is angry acts as if he worships idols. And it is written and command to teach us about the transgression of idol worshipping, which is included within the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Then we're gonna go to verse 267. We're in 266. And here, you have 265 talks about anger, saying that basically the klipa will dwell in the liver. When he talks about sexually immoral behavior, he says that basically the klipa will reside in the spleen. Then 267 talks about those who commit sexually immoral behavior hide in the dark. As it is written, the eye also of the adulterer waits for the twilight, saying, no eye shall see me. This is an allusion to the black blood of the spleen, where the klipa of sexually immoral behavior resides, as black blood is similar to darkness. The soul of whoever commits bloodshed, idolatry, or sexually immoral behavior shall be reincarnated inside the three forms of klipa, the liver, the gall, and the spleen, and it is sentenced in Gehinnom by three evil rulers called the Destroyer, Anger, and Wrath. So this is from Zohar, as I mentioned before, volume 2, page 182a. And if you have a Kabbalah Center version, that will be volume 1 under the Bereshit Aleph, under idolatry, bloodshed, and sexually immoral behavior, paragraphs 265, 267, and it goes all the way to 268. And those is a good explanation about anger, how this thing can lead you to to idol worshiping, and how sexually immoral behavior and bloodshed, also can blemish spirituality, and how this is related also to the tree of knowledge of good and evil. For basically, like everything has to do with the beginning, right? Has to do with what happened in the Garden of Eden. So in Job 18:4 says, you who tear up his soul in his anger, a person that basically breaks his soul, loses his soul because of being angry, right? This person should want to repent, and this person will need a lot of work, a lot of great deal of holiness and zeal until the soul returns to his vessel. It's the horrible consequence of being angry, and there's also another type of anger that we're going to be talking about, the anger when people defend the Torah or give rebuke, because such anger is different. The anger is actually for the sake of heaven, provided that it is not for the person's honor, that it is for the honor of the Creator. Okay, so this is a different kind of anger that we're gonna see. Is holy anger, which is basically an anger based on the love for the Creator and the love for the other human beings, to make sure that they are correct. So let's go to each of the verses, and I say, an affliction of tzara'at. If an affliction of tzara'at, this refers to anger, as we mentioned before. Tzara'at has a numerical value of 761. When you add 1 for the word itself, And this is the same value. This is the same value to 761. It's the same value of the combination of the two names Adonai and Elohim. Okay. Also, this numerical value is actually, when you spell Adonai and Elohim, when you actually expand Adonai, right? Let me see, L. I want to make sure I have it well. Adonai, which is Aleph, Dalet, and Nun, and Yod. I have here made a mistake. I'm gonna try to fix this. This is Dalet. It's supposed to be Dalet. Okay, so now we're good. I knew something was kind of wrong. So it's Aleph, Dalet, Nun, and Yod. That's Adonai. Expanded plus 4 will give you 675. And 675 plus 86, which is the name of Elohim, as we have seen in the second, Elohim equals 86, right? So what we see is that in here, we add these two and gives you 761, which is the same numerical value as the word Tzara'at. This indicates that if the person has this trait of anger, he's blemishing these two names of Adonai and Elohim. Okay, so here we see how the person blemishes basically the name or the four-letter name of the Yod, He, and the Vav, He. Here we see that this person with anger and haughtiness not only blemishes the Yod, He, and the Vav, He, but also blemishes the name Adonai and Elohim. And we're gonna see why. Then he says, that it shall be brought to the Kohen, which refers to the Kohen above, which is the angel Michael. The Kohen shall look and behold if it is a white sight on the skin, meaning that this person already possesses the trait of haughtiness, which refers to sight. This will lead to anger. So this person does not view himself or herself as equal to other, but superior, right? Then if he has changed the hair to white, which is basically has switched the name of Elohim, which is holy, to the name gods or other gods, then the word halavan, it has a numerical value of 87, as we mentioned before, right? And the word is the same as the name Elohim, plus 1. If a person becomes angry, he drives away this name Elohim, which is holy, and then other Elohim, other gods, will rest in the place. We rest there. We take the place. And there's a healthy life flesh within the sight. This alludes to the evil angel Samael, who is referred to as the end of all flesh, referring to the Zohar, volume 1, page 63b. This person actually that is haughty not only seeks authority and control over others, but is also angry. And this is why the angel Samael takes control, because this person is opening the doors to the angel Samael in order to live there. So the living flesh or life flesh refers to this evil angel Samael. So it's appointed to end all life. And that's why it says in Bereshit 6:13, the end of all flesh. To this trait of anger, Samael gains life, gains status, and grows beyond the power that he's supposed to have inside this person. And the word basite, with the sight, can be understood, from the sight as well, which means Samael has gained life, power, and status inside this person. If it is all tzara'at, if the person has anger for a long time, right? this person, because of the haughtiness, is capable of having all other types of anger. It's called old, right? It's basically called Sara'at Noshenet. It's called old because as soon as a person acquires this trait of haughtiness, he acquires this trait of anger, as was mentioned before, and also others. So Noshenet is an acronym, as we're gonna see here. We're gonna see the word Noshenet right here. Sara'at Noshenet, the yellow word in here, that's Noshenet, which means chronic or old leprosy. Is an acronym for Na'akra Neshamato Vasar Shachen Tachteya. His soul has been uprooted, and a stranger lays between it, or is dwelling in the place. So this is from Job as well, what you're gonna find in chapter 8, verse 4. You who tear up his soul in anger, you tear up your soul leaves you, and a stranger will take the place. That stranger is the angel Samael. Okay, and that's why the Kohen shall declare him contaminated. The Kohen shall not quarantine, meaning you shall not, or this soul shall not be remain enclosed inside this person. And it's not possible because the moment the person gets angry, the soul departs and nothing remains inside this person, for this person is contaminated. So there will be no quarantine because the soul is not going to be there. The soul will depart as soon as this person gets angry. When I said the soul, I'm not talking about this evil soul called Samael. I'm talking about the real soul of the person. Okay. Now, in chapter 13, we're already in 1 hour. Hopefully we are able to finish this on time. We got a lot to cover. And the Sarah has spread throughout the skin, and the Sarah covered the entire skin of the affliction, from his head to the feet, wherever the eyes of the Kohen can see. And the Kohen looks, and behold, the Sarah covered all his flesh. Then he, the Kohen, shall declare the affliction to be pure, having turned completely white. It is pure. On the day healthy flesh appears in it, he shall be declared to be contaminated. The Kohen shall look at the healthy flesh and declare him contaminated. The healthy flesh is contaminated, it is tzara'at. But if the healthy flesh changes again and turns white, he shall come to the Kohen. The Kohen shall look at it, and behold, the affliction has changed white. The Kohen shall declare the affliction pure, it is pure. So now we're going to read on the sheet Aleph. It's going to be on paragraph 50 under the title Let There Be a Firmament, on the same volume that we mentioned before. And for those of you who had the regular Zohar, so it says here the following, that this verse alludes to the anger expressed by Torah scholar, which are entirely positive, because it is for the sake of Torah and for giving rebuke. Such anger does not uproot the soul and does not contaminate the body, inside or outside. This anger is actually for the sake of heaven. And as an example, it says here, another dispute was settled like above. And this is on 50, right? A dispute that rose and did not come down and was based on decency was that between Shammai and Hillel. Shammai was the aspect of the left on high, while Hillel was the aspect of the supernal right. And the Holy One, blessed be He, intervened between them and approved of them. This means that the differences and argument between Shammai and Hillel reached them from the central column of above, which is the secret of the Holy One, blessed is He. This was a dispute for the name's sake, basically Lishma, and the heavens, Seramping. Reconcile this dispute to establish both. Because of this, their illuminations continue to exist. This dispute is like the work of creation. It is similar to what the central column achieved for the sake of establishing the work of creation. But Korah denied establishing the work of creation and the dispute was toward the heavens, namely seraphim, that is the reconciling column, and he wanted to deny the principles of the Torah, which is seraphim. Assuredly, this dispute and denial was a result of the efforts of Gehinnom and its power of judgment cleaved to Korah and he to it. Thus he fell into Gehinnom. This is, Korah, the rebellion against Moses, and how this the earth basically opened up and he was swallowed, and those who were following him. Okay, so this is a different type of anger, an anger that comes from basically the sake of heaven. Chapter 13, verse 24 and 25. If a person will have a burn from a fire on his skin, and the heel skin of the burn is a white baheret. Baheret is a mark on the skin similar to a boil. That is streaked with red or is all white. The Kohen shall look at it, and behold, hair has turned white in the baheret, and its appearance is deeper than the skin. It is tara'at that spread on the burn. The Kohen shall declare him contaminated. It is tara'at, that's an affliction. This alludes to the person who is overbearing, strict, and demanding, which is another branch of anger. Okay, a person that is overbearing and angry, also blemishes the spiritual realm. And it says here, if a person does not seem right in his sight, he becomes disappointed. This person, is like always demanding, and it doesn't matter what other people do, if it's not right and according to what they think, it's very disappointing, and they become angry again. As before, we mentioned anger basically is like fire, is something that burns you from the inside. It says basically on Psalm 127 verse 1, in vain is the watchman vigilant. His effort are not for any avail, because this person, even though they're kind of demanding and watching everybody to make sure they do what they need, that kind of stuff, or what they person needs, right? This person basically is doing nothing other than letting the evil angel get inside him. And this is called basically a burning flame. Anger is called burning flame. This is why it says if a person will have a burn from fire in his skin. So there's a verse that says the Kohen shall look at it, and behold, hair has turned white in the baheret. It says that since this trait of being overbearing is rooted on baheret, which is haughtiness, it has turned white, Laban, which means that this person has removed the name Elohim, and other gods are living inside this person. This person is basically worshiping idols. Okay, so chapter 13, verse 45 and 46. It says in the Zohar, volume 2, page 210b, good deeds that a person does throughout his lifetime become a garment for his soul when this person departs from the world, right? And in Bereshit 24:1 says, Abraham was old and well in his year, meaning that he was basically arriving to his day in a good way, and with a good soul, with a good garment. Also in Kings 1:1 says that King David was old and well in his years, so he achieved having or attained levels of in his soul that were good levels, or basically divine levels. So these levels, basically, if a person sins, God forbid, these levels are blemished. We also know that the Shekhinah is above a person's head. This is from Zohar volume 3, page 187a. It says in Proverbs 9:8, your head shall never lack oil. Oil means the soul, right? In Tikkun 10 says, that all the while a person holds on to his wicked ways and remains impure, his prayers are not accepted. So any Torah learning mitzvah or anything that the person does, if the person is impure, meaning is haughty, is arrogant, is angry all the time, these prayers are never going to go up. Unless, of course, like we mentioned, he learned Shammai, this is for the sake of heaven, then these prayers are taken by the Kohen Hagadol, who is Michael, and basically elevated. And chapter 13, verse 55-58 says, "The Kohen shall look after the affliction has been washed, and behold, the affliction has not changed its appearance, and the affliction has not spread. It is contaminated. You shall burn it in fire. It is a penetrating affliction in his worn garment, or in his new garment. But if the Kohen shall look, and behold, the affliction grew faint after it was washed, he shall tear it from the garment, and from the leather, and from the warp, or from the woof. If it appears again in the garment, or in the warp, or in the woof, or in any leather garment, it is a spreading affliction. You shall burn in fire that which contains the affliction. But if the garment, or the warp, or the woof, or any leather garment has been washed, and then the affliction left them, it shall be immersed again, and it shall be pure." So these are people that basically committed terrible sins, and they repent, and they basically decide that they're never gonna do this again. However, there's people that do not feel regret. They don't confess, they don't fast, they don't do anything like afflicting their soul or anything like that, like we do in Yom Kippur. And these people basically don't afflict themselves, and they don't rectify themselves, and they don't attain these levels of the soul that we were talking that are like garments. It says in Talmud Yoma 86a, there are 4 categories of people who require atonement, and the more severe ones require repentance, Yom Kippur, and suffering to achieve atonement. If a person has desecrated the name of Hashem, he does not achieve full atonement until death. If a person commits a terrible sin, he must rectify it in a manner that is prescribed by the Kabbalist. Otherwise, this person, his repentance will be less effective. If a person repents out of love for the Creator, their sins are considered as mitzvot, and this is a mystery, that Kabbalah teaches. Even at the end, if you are a person that repent properly, even the evil angel become an angel of salvation for you. Okay, so keep that in mind. That's something. It's a very deep teaching of Kabbalah. Even your wrongdoings, and even the angel of the evil angel, becomes an angel of salvation, because it led you to that. That's why the angel Samael at the end has the name of God, right? Because it's his mission. It's like a program. He's programmed to do that. You cannot change the program. If you change the program of that angel, it's a different name. It's a different angel. Okay, so that's what we have from the Abir Jacob. We extended ourselves a little bit more than an hour, which is very fine. There's some things very interesting in this parsha that are important to know. So this is from Ramchal. This is based on the verse in Vayikra 13:45, Leviticus 13:45, and the leper, or basically the person that has Sarah, who has a skin affliction, his clothes should be torn and his hair should be grown. He shall cloak himself up to his lip, and he should call out, impure, impure. Okay, tamei tamei, basically tamei tamei. It basically says here, that the clothing is a physical representation of the spiritual, or the ruined spiritual state of what is called clothing, basically the neshama, due to the impurity of this person. And the hair represents the abundance of judgment. Covering his lips represents the removal of spiritual lights, limiting his speech. Remember, we talked about that covenant of the speech. And these acts serve two functions. They cause him to have a contrite heart and move to repentance of the sins, and also serve as a warning to people to keep their distance and to not get entangled in the sins that cause this affliction in this person. These are basically, there are sins that affect the inner essence of a person, spiritual root, and they're lesser sins that affect the external aspects of the person. The outer aspects of Kedusha are comparable to garments covering the inner aspects of Kedusha. A person who sins in a manner that affects the inner aspects of Kedusha is afflicted with what is called Sara'at of his skin. If the sins are less severe than is affecting the outer garments of Kedusha, then the Sara'at is basically measure formation that afflicts the garments instead. Then on chapter 13:47 of Vayikra, and the garment which has in it an affliction is in a woolen garment or linen garment. Basically, outer garments is mentioned before the spiritual root of his soul and all that. The woolen linen represent Chesed and Din, and if one damages the spiritual garment associated with Chesed, then he will see Tzara'at in his wool garment representing Chesed. If his sin causes damage in the spiritual garment associated with Din, his affliction will damage Din. So this is basically turning this Chesed and Geburah into Chesed and Geburah of Tumah, which is the opposite words of or Sefirot of the Kedusha side of holiness. Then chapter 13 verse 48, or in the warp or in the woof of the linen wolf, Sarah is capable of afflicting warp and wolf. This is because it's measure for measure, so the blemish done is going to require the same amount of tikkun or repair. It's not like if you did a damage of $50, you have to pay $50. You don't have to pay $75 or anything like that. So it's measure per measure, okay? Or in leather or anything fashioned of leather. This is on verse 48. There are cases in which a person in a spiritual essence and the root, the leprosy doesn't attach to the physical essence of the body, but here begin to form in the leather furnishings. Perhaps this means if my energy is starting to affect things that I have with me, things that I need to live, things that I need to advance spiritually, then this might, if I am aware of my spiritual being, right, that I'm damaging this might call me and bring me to repent. And the affliction is brought to the Kohen Hagadol, who has the say of saying pure or impure. It says in the nature of the affliction is inconclusive, then it must be quarantined for a 7-day period, and then after that, the Kohen will decide if it's impure or not, will declare Tamei or not. And something very interesting is, to understand that the hair basically represents judgment. See, there's judgment in there. Okay, that's why when we see the word Lavan or Levana has the same numerical value of Elohim. And what we're trying to do here basically is to understand that there's water used. There's water used basically to clean the wound or to clean, the garment, to see if that garment, gets better. If it gets better, the water means Chesed, mercy, then, the person might be declared as clean. So where does we get this thing about garments and all that? We're reading from basically the Arizal chart, Hagilgulim, the gates of reincarnation. In the very beginning, chapter 1, it says we begin with what Hassal have written, that the souls have 5 names. Their order from bottom to top is Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chaya, and Yehidah. Undoubtedly, they are not called these by chance. However, know and this is, what we need to get and understand, know that the person himself is the spiritual element within the body. The body is only clothing for the person, and is not the person himself. As it says, on the flesh of man do not anoint. This is from Shemot 30:32. And as it is mentioned in the Zohar, Parshat Bereshit, page 20b. So basically, when we hear here about Sarah is talking here about kind of spiritual leprosy, but then this leprosy can be transferred to the clothing, can manifest physically, basically, as well. So it can give us illnesses, it can give us, all types of basically blemishes to our physical body, which is our clothing, the clothing of our soul. Okay, and like I mentioned before, this parsha is all about internal things, about anger, haughtiness, how we need to make sure that we're in check, that we're not basically changing the name Elohim to other gods, that we keep that gate all the time, guard, and that we understand that there are two Brit, actually there's three, but we're talking about two: the Brit Milah, which is circumcision, but also Brit Milah is also the covenant of the word, covenant of the mouth. One, which is sexual transgression, is alluded by the circumcision, but then there's the other one, Lashon Hara, which is evil speech, is alluded by the Tzara'ah that is mentioned, that can hurt our spiritual essence, and then it can be transferred to our clothing, as well as illnesses and things that we don't need basically in our lives, right? Because we want to live a life without any pain or anything like that. So I hope you have learned something new in this parsha, and remember to not only learn here what we just talk about from this parsha, but try to also do some research yourself. What is the meaning of the covenant of circumcision when it comes to Yesod, the covenant of the circumcision of the heart when it comes to Tiferet, the covenant of the circumcision of the tongue when it comes to Da'at and all that, and the meaning of the 7 and the 8, 7 meaning the 7 midot and we need to correct, right? And 8, the transcendence that has to do with the spiritual realm, with this 50th gate that we need to achieve as a whole community called Israel. Okay, so I hope you have enjoyed this and you have learned something new, and I'll see you in the next study of the next parsha. And if you see me before Shabbat Shalom. I'll see you next time.